What I'm interested in is that how many people are so critical. In fact, you don't have to say much to be sued or even potentially get arrested in some countries if you're even remotely suggesting that resistance is justified in a situation like that, which is, by the way, true by international law. Nobody's picking Israel up on the fact that Israel is expressing, Israeli politicians, everybody is horrendously racist against Palestinians for being Palestinian. And the other thing, too, is nobody's speaking up Israel about the fact that Israel's citizenship is based on a racial definition of Jewishness. Israel is a racist state through and through. And everybody picks up on Hamas and complains about everybody else, but nobody says anything about Israel, and the world should have known. You mentioned how Israel's been treating Gaza all this time from the beginning, and collective punishment, especially against the civilian population, is actually against this international law. Where is the world? Where is the world court? Where are the world courts? Where are the world's politicians to speak about that? And one more thing I wanted to mention that I remember that I might have said before here in a previous book. When I was a child growing up in Israel, when you wanted to say to somebody, go to hell, you just wanted to, you got annoyed with somebody, you wanted to go to hell. You wouldn't say go to hell, you'd say go to Gaza. So I'm 61 years old this year, and I'm talking about growing up in the 70s when I start to understand things. That's what you said. So that tells you that even back then in everyday society in Israel, people understood perfectly well how hellish Gaza was, and that was then. That's not the 16 years before 7th of October. That's what we used to say. Go to Gaza, lech le'aza, we used to say. Can you believe this? I mean, this tells you that everybody knew you're supposed to be perfect. And the second thing is that everybody expects people who are just like us. Imagine that we here in, let's say, in the Highlands of Scotland suddenly get invaded and we have to form a resistance. How many of us are actually professional resistors? You don't know how to do that. You have to figure it out. So everybody says, "Oh, when you're standing in front of an organized military force, it's a professional force with training, with organization, and then you expect a bunch of civilians to suddenly they're forming resistance. Suddenly they're supposed to be organized, supposed to know, they're supposed to have diplomacy, they're supposed to have the right language." Honestly, I see it in my work all the time, even when you have domestic abuse, where the victim thinks that they're supposed to be perfect, and the perpetrators often talk about that, but she wasn't very nice or he wasn't very nice. I mean, seriously, a crime is a crime. Today I came across an article by Ilan Pappé it calls it On Moral Panic and the Courage to Speak, the West's Silence on Gaza. It's from the 19th of April and it was published in the Palestine Chronicle. One of the things he's saying is during the Nakba and up to 1967, it was not easy to get hold of information, and the oppression after 1967 was mostly incremental and as such was ignored by the Western media and politics, which refused to acknowledge its cumulative effect on the Palestinians. But these last 18 months are very different. Ignoring the genocide in the Gaza Strip and the ethnic cleansing in the West Bank can only be described as intentional and not out of ignorance. Both the Israelis' actions and the discourse that accompanies them are too visible to be ignored, unless politicians, academics, and journalists choose to do so. This kind of ignorance is first and foremost the result of successful Israeli lobbying that thrived on the fertile ground of European guilt complex, is racism and Islamophobia. So basically saying there's no excuse, there's absolutely no excuse. Yeah, the thing is this: Israel will not stop until it finishes its settler colonial program, which has always been about replacing all the non-Jewish indigenous people of historic Palestine with what Israel calls Jews. Everything we see is just another step in that program. It's never stopped. When I read you that little bit from Ilan Pappé, he talked about that it was originally a bit incremental, little bits here, little bits there. He actually called it incremental genocide. And then the opportunity of Gaza came along, and then they escalated it. And it's all linked together with the fact that what Israel is capable of doing and how bad it is for any period of time in history is directly correlated with the amount of support Israel actually has. So the more support Israel enjoys, the more brazen it becomes. Nobody's stopping it.